The following program sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts.
About money, a different approach to investing you won't hear anywhere else. Your host, Mike Adams, is a registered investment advisor and works with investment portfolios exceeding over $100,000 in net worth, and has a proven track record of managing long-term investments surpassing the markets in the long term. The information shared on the following program is for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. And now, here's Mike.
It's Friday afternoon, and we're going to be talking about money. You know, my main function is managing client portfolios, and that's where I spend most of my time and my focus. But to prepare for a 1-hour show, it takes me about 8 hours during the week. That's time spent consuming written material, time compiling things, time putting together my notes. And I put that together on my desktop computer, get everything ready, and then I load it down to my Surface. And I bring my Surface into the studio, and I have my notes all prepared, all ready to go. Well, that's what normally happens. I've been doing this for 8 years now. And once before, I forgot my notes. And once again today, I didn't download to my Surface. I realized that just as we're walking into the studio, and it's a 17-block walk, and we do walk from the office here. So anyway, today we get to run strictly from memory. Strictly from those 8 hours. We'll see how I do. I'm sure that there's going to be some numbers which I forget, because numbers are crucial, and yet numbers are things that I write down in my notes. So follow along. We've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to have a lot to talk about in the next few weeks, and I will try to remember my notes and stick them on my Surface the next time and the time after that, and maybe it'll be another 4 or 5 years before I forget again. I've got an interesting guest for the program today, and we're back to talking about the change in administration. Now, earlier today, one of the reasons I forgot to download the notes is I was doing a survey. TD Ameritrade, where we host some of our 401k clients, TD Ameritrade called and wanted me to do a survey. And what they said was going to be 5 to 10 minutes actually turned out to be closer to 20 or 25 minutes. And that put me out of time. And I was rushing to get out of the office, get here so I could do the program. But I want to tell you about the survey, because this is not uncommon. Most brokerage firms, most custodians actually do a survey. And they survey people to see what are your outlooks for the coming year. And I have to tell you, of all the years I've done these surveys, and I do it year after year after year, of all the years I've done it, this has been the most difficult year. Because as I think about this, as I talk about this on the radio, as I talk about the things going forward with the new administration, it's very difficult. It's difficult to wrap my head around where we're going. They ask in that survey questions about the economy. Where do you think it's going? Do you think it's going to be increasing? Do you think it's going to be increasing faster, slower? Are we going to experience a recession? You know, the fact is, you can make an argument to say that the GDP is going to grow faster. There's going to be new stimulus to the economy, building the infrastructure, taxes are going to be cut. Both of those have the potential to augment the growth in the economy. On the other hand, we've got commodity prices that have been really low, which have been a stimulus for the past year. And that's probably going to go away as prices begin to increase. We're going to be experiencing more inflation. We're going to be seeing interest rates rise, which are negative for a growth in the economy. So how do all those things relate? It's really difficult for me to get my fingers around, my head around what's going to be going on. And along with it, the question was, how do you see the stock market? Do you think stock market's going to be higher at the end of next year? Do you think it's going to be higher at the end of 6 months? Do you think it's going to be lower? Do you think it's going to be much lower? Again, some of those questions come down for the same thing about growth in the economy. Are interest rates going to be higher? Yes, I believe interest rates are going to be higher, and that's a negative for the stock market. Are commodity prices going to be higher? Is inflation going to be higher? Yes, I believe both are going to be higher, and that's going to be a drag on the economy. Do I believe that wages are going to increase more rapidly? Yeah, we're down to low unemployment, and that normally means, and we've started to see wages increase. That tends to be a drag on the economy. On the other hand, if the Trump administration, if Trump can push through infrastructure and maybe cut taxes, that could be a positive for the economy. So where are things going to go? I talked about the potential trade wars. That's a very, very big negative if we get into trade wars. And we know already that Mexico has already implemented or started to implement their contingency plan. They're already taking the view that NAFTA is going to go away. It's difficult to imagine this renegotiation of NAFTA because it's a very different thing to walk away from a bad real estate deal than to walk away from a trade agreement. And it's very difficult. The number of jobs, the number of things that are involved is much, much greater. So it raises some concerns about the economy, about the stock market. The survey went on to ask about the biggest issue we were facing for next year. And if it's not the economy and the stock market, I don't know what it is. Is it going to be compliance? Is it going to be personnel? Is it going to be outsourcing? For me, it really is what's going to happen with client accounts and what do I do about that? They ask about what the biggest competitive concern was for next year. My competitors. Again, I'm less concerned about competitors than with the economy. I just want to do well. If my competitors do well, that's fine. What's going to happen in terms of revenues? That could be very good. It could be very bad. It could be just neutral. Trying to forecast this year, I'm trying to tell you, has been very, very difficult. They ask about 401ks. Is our 401k business going to increase? Yes, I believe that is going to increase. I believe that of all the things, I can project that will increase. They ask about the impact of robo-advisors. Is it going to affect our business? I don't think so. They ask if we were going to merge or buy another firm. I don't think we'll do that. I think that we're living at a time in trying to get our arms around what's going to be going on with the new administration, that we have to be prepared, and yet we don't know exactly what we're going to prepare for. So that gets us down to something more specific and more concrete. The top priority for people that have been surveyed nationwide is Obamacare. And I started to talk about each of these areas where Trump has made promises, where things are going to probably change. Obamacare is top on people's priority list. Their top priority is to replace Obamacare. And it's been any number of times it's been brought up in the House of Representatives to repeal Obamacare, to modify Obamacare, but to get rid of Obamacare. Sometimes just to directly just repeal it and go back to the way it was before without any replacement, sometimes with the idea that there would be something to replace it with. And the ideas that they've talked about, and I believe that there will be changes. Even the Democrats wanted to make changes to Obamacare over the last couple of years to improve it, but that didn't go anywhere in the House of Representatives. I believe that it will be changed. Whether it's replaced, whether it's repealed, I don't know. The talk about replacing it is a replacement using high-risk pools, using vouchers, and pushing a lot of things back to the states. There's a couple issues. And after Trump met with Obama, they came out, and Trump came out with a statement that he wanted to keep students who up until age 26 can continue on their parents' insurance. He also wanted to make sure that pre-existing conditions were covered. So what is it? With 20 million people added to the insurance rolls, just to simply repeal it and do away with it is going to put 20 million people who have health insurance, in a position where they don't have health insurance anymore. That's a very, very big issue. The second big issue is, what do you do about pre-existing conditions? 5% of the population uses 50% of health care cost. 5%, 1 out of 20, uses 50%. In a lot of businesses, we talk about the 20% who do 80% of our revenues, or 20% of our costs. 20% of our vendors take 80% of our costs. In this case with healthcare, it's 5% of the people use 50% of the healthcare. And there's two populations. One are the people that are in the last 6 months of life, and the other are people with pre-existing conditions. Those are two huge aspects. Those are two big things that you have to deal with if you're going to replace Obamacare. And we'll come back to that. We're coming to a commercial break. We're going to come back and address more on Obamacare right after the commercial break. That's a very big issue to deal with. Don't go away. So much more to do. And I may not have my notes, but I remember most of this. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
About Money with Mike Adams will resume in a moment on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Did you know the 20-year annualized S&P return was 8.19%, while the 20-year annualized return for the average equity mutual fund investor was just 4.67%? That's a gap of 3.52%. It doesn't sound like much now, but it could mean the difference between retiring in comfort and running out of money. For some seniors, a gap that large could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars and cut their retirement short. Don't run out of money. Call Mike Adams of Adams Financial Concepts today, 206-903-1019, and learn more about how you can, 1, create wealth for retirement, and 2, protect yourself from running out of money. Adams Financial Concepts specializes in creating and maintaining wealth. Call today, 206-903-1019, or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
We're back with more about money. For details on what you hear on today's show, visit adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Now, here again is Mike Adams.
So we're in the midst of a series. We started a series last week. We're in the midst of a series of talking about the change of the administration and the impact it's going to have on the economy, on the stock market. What do you do? How do you prepare for it? Where things are going? And I want to take some of the specific areas. I started last week talking about the trade deals. This week I want to talk about the Obamacare. Maybe we'll get to taxes. There's a lot of areas in which to cover. So I started talking about Obamacare. Number one priority for people is to do away with Obamacare. And the issues are the number of people that are now newly insured, the 20 million, plus the existing conditions, pre-existing conditions. In the proposals, some of the proposals that have come out in replacing Obamacare, they've talked about using high-risk pools. High-risk pools are something that 35 states did before. These are people that have pre-existing conditions or that are drawing a lot of money from the healthcare plan. Insurance companies, of course, want to do away with them. If you're an insurance company and you sell fire insurance, you'd rather do away with those people who have a huge potential for a fire. If you buy fire insurance, you hope you never have to use it. That's the idea with health insurance. You pay for your health insurance and hope you never have to use it. But for the insurance companies with healthcare, the issue was, what do you do with people that have significant medical problems? Because they draw a huge amount. 5% of the people draw 50% of healthcare cost. 5%. 1 out of 20 draws 50% of the healthcare cost. And a good portion, a third of those, are people in the last 6 months of life. And the other 2/3 are people with pre-existing conditions that go on and on and on. So the idea before we had Obamacare was to use a high-risk pool, and 35 states had high-risk pools. Those high-risk pools had deductibles, some up to $25,000. So you had to pay out $25,000 before you could access your health care. Think about it. $25,000. Many people have very small deductibles, $1,000 or even $5,000 or even less. Not only that, the amount you could draw against on your insurance in some cases was limited to as little as $75,000 per year. Think about it. Going to have an appendectomy, it was close to that amount. Going to have some of the routine surgeries, it's close to that amount. When the hospitals are charging $6,000 and $8,000 a day, plus operating room time, plus doctor time, plus. Small procedures are $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000. Here, for a pre-existing condition in a high-risk pool, limited to $75,000. Some are higher. And with all that, 50% of the charges, 50% of the health care charges in the high-risk pools were not covered by premiums. They were covered by taxpayers covering the losses. So the high-risk pools did not really work. They didn't work well, but it got rid of the high-risk health people, the people with high risk. So the insurance companies liked the high-risk pools. The states didn't so much like the high-risk pools. Usually what you would like to have happen is if you have somebody with pre-existing conditions, you have a lot of healthy people that are paying premiums that are not going to use their medical insurance, that are not going to have many claims, and those premiums are paying for those who are drawing from the healthcare system. So one of the issues that came up with the Obamacare this year is the increase in premiums, which increases average 22% nationwide. 22%. Interesting enough, it was significantly less in the blue states than the red states. Take Washington, for example. We didn't see premium increases or very small premium increases. Some states saw 100% increase. The state pools are set up and the state insurance is set up in such a way that the insurance that's offered in each state is offered on a statewide basis rather than a national basis. And it's offered under state insurance commissioners. And so the tighter the insurance commissioner is with the funding, the bigger the premium that's going to be paid. All those issues have to be covered. When you look in total, with the premiums, everybody's talking about how much costs have gone up. If you look at the 6 years we have between the beginning of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and the current time, premiums have increased. Healthcare costs have increased 34%. They've gone from 100% to 134% after 6 years. If you take the first 6 years of the Bush administration, from 2000 to 2006, healthcare costs increased 78%. So they increased twice as fast during those years without Obamacare as they did with Obamacare. Now, where we go? Trump has promised that there's going to be a repeal. The Republican House has been trying to repeal and replace. The Senate is controlled by the Republicans, so I believe that there's going to be a change. Even the Democrats know that there's some things that are wrong in Obamacare. They want to make some changes. I think everybody agrees that there has to be some changes, but what those changes are is yet to be seen. It's not an easy solution. It's not going to be as simple as just saying simply repeal it. It's not going to be simply a matter of eliminating those with pre-existing conditions. And yet, the key thing for the Obamacare was pre-existing conditions. Those people that are consuming a lot of the healthcare costs. Healthcare costs were increasing at 6 to 7% per year, faster than GDP was increasing. That's an issue that has to be dealt with in one way or another. And so how we come out of this, that I'm not sure. I'm sure we're going to make changes. I'm sure there may be some significant changes. You know, it's one of those areas we have to see. One of the survey questions from TD Ameritrade is, what sectors do you think are going to do well in the coming 6 months and year? One of those sectors is healthcare. I am sure there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers in the healthcare area. Picking winners and losers is going to be much more difficult, maybe as difficult as figuring out what to do with Obamacare. We got more to come. I want to get to taxes, I hope maybe today. And if not taxes, I want to talk about forecasting in general. So that's coming. But first, I want to introduce my guest today. I think he's got a great story you want to hear. I think it's one of those public service things that is great. My guest is John Yuski from the Green Lake Boathouse, co-owner and general manager. Welcome to the program, John.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, John, why don't we talk a little bit about your background?
Well, I'm a graduate from the University of Washington. Kind of fell into the boat rental industry as a summer job when I was a student there. I met the owner, founder of the company, Clark Ray, who became an immediate mentor and business partner of mine, and I've been working for the company for 7 years ever since.
Great. So let's talk about the Green Lake Boathouse.
So we are a seasonal boat rental operation located in North Seattle at Green Lake Park. We do rentals of kayaks, canoes, stand-up paddleboards, rowboats, and sailboats during the spring and summer season, generally between April through October.
So let's talk a little bit. We'll come back to the boathouse, but let's talk a little bit about Green Lake Park some, because it is enormous, or fairly enormous when you look at it in terms of volume. But tell us about Green Lake itself.
Yeah, it's a great park. It's I call it the Central Park of Seattle. It was designed by the same folks, the Olmsted brothers, who designed Central Park in New York City. It's a 2.8-mile loop that goes all the way around Green Lake in Seattle. It's constantly busy with lots of folks. It's a growing, thriving neighborhood in Seattle, like most neighborhoods in Seattle. It's the busiest public park in the state of Washington. It receives over 2.2 million visitors per year. So we have plenty of walk-by traffic who are visiting either our boat rental or a cafe.
So you have the boat rental, you have a cafe, and some of those boats are fishing boats, right?
Yes, yeah. Green Lake is a public fishing lake. They stock the lake with trout, and so some of our customers are fishermen. We sell tackle and rent poles, and some of our customers rent just from the dock, and some rent off our boats. But that's a fun activity, another reason that brings people to do recreation at Green Lake.
And you rent all the equipment as well?
Yes, yeah. We have over 150 boats in our fleet, and on a busy summer day, we have every single piece of equipment out in the lake.
Well, we're going to come back and talk about that after the break, because we are coming to a break. We're going to talk about what kind of things you can experience at Green Lake Boathouse, and what equipment and what you can do, and the classes. So don't go away. We're going to be right back after this. We've got so much more to talk about, and we're coming up to a break. Just in a couple seconds, I thought that it was going to be here. Here we are.
More about money coming up with Mike Adams on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Creating and maintaining wealth has been the specialty of Adams Financial Concepts for over 20 years. Every portfolio managed by Adams Financial Concepts is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. The client's interest always comes first in portfolio decisions. Call Mike Adams today at 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com to check out their AFC performance. They welcome your review. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Is there really such a thing as a safe place to put your money? And where would that be? Under the mattress? Stuffed in a cookie jar? No, no, no. You want real safety? Find out about the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. It protects your money up to $250,000 in bank accounts like checking, savings, and CDs. And talk about solid. In 75 years, no one has ever lost a penny of FDIC-insured money. Better odds than your cookie jar. So if you have
Now we return to About Money. There's more information waiting for you at adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here again is your host, Mike Adams.
So I'm here with John Yuski from the Green Lake Boathouse. Got a little contraction in there, a little too much. So let's talk about the Green Lake Boathouse, the history. When did it get started? What happened? How did it grow into what it is today?
Yeah, boat rentals have been around at Green Lake since the early 1900s, but our company started in 1974 when we built the boathouse, and we have a contract with the Seattle Parks Department, so they're a partner of ours. So when you're supporting us, you're supporting Seattle Parks and Recreation. We've been doing boat rentals there since the 70s. And in 2009, we opened our indoor cafe there inside the same building. And so we have a full espresso bar, snacks, ice cream, fishing tackle, like we mentioned before, and anything else you'd really need for a day at the lake. That's our goal. We have so many diverse park patrons who come in and doing all sorts of activities, and we're there to support them.
And I would imagine with a lot of traffic, 2.2 million people going by, you see a lot of people on a once-off basis, but also with regulars too.
Absolutely, yeah. We have a great customer base. We have tourists who come in and out of town, visiting from all around the world, who want to check out Green Lake. And then we also have the locals in the community who are there every single day, walking their dogs, out with their strollers, running, walking, swimming, every activity you can imagine.
So along with the boathouse, along with the cafe, what sort of things do you rent?
So we have kayaks, singles and doubles, canoes, rowboats, stand-up paddleboards, which is the big popular thing these days, and sailboats as well. The stand-up paddleboards, like I mentioned, are the new big popular thing. Since probably the early 2000s, it's been a growing industry, and we're adding more and more to our rental fleet every year to compensate for the demand.
So for somebody that doesn't know what a paddleboard is, why don't you describe what it is?
Yeah, it looks like a surfboard. It's a long 9 to approximately 10 or 12 feet long board, maybe a few feet wide. You're going to stand on top of it. Some people like to start on their knees to begin with and paddle yourself in the upright position. It got its start back in Hawaii is where they were originally invented, and they've been really catching on here in the mainland United States, like I said, since the early 2000s.
And it's easy to do?
Yes, we send out beginners all the time. We can give you a little quick tutorial on land if you have any questions or you're a little unsure, need a little demonstration, but we send out first-timers almost every day. It's really quick and easy to pick up.
So this is something that's new. Before that, there were other activities that...
Yes, yeah. Windsurfing, for example, was the last phase that we kind of went through. In the 80s and 90s, it was really popular at Green Lake, but it requires a lot more equipment, so stand-up paddleboarding is a cheaper option, and windsurfing will require a lesson, whereas, like we mentioned earlier, stand-up paddleboarding, you can just hop on and go and pretty much teach yourself there in that first hour when you rent.
And you have sailboats as well.
Yeah, we do. We have 10-foot open-ended Hunter sites. Can fit up to 2 adults at most. That's the only piece of equipment that we rent that we require previous sailing experience. Not recommended for beginners on those sailboats.
So coming back to paddle boards, I should have asked the question when we were talking about paddle boards, but you also do yoga classes on.
Yes, with this paddleboard phase, stand-up paddleboard yoga has become a real popular thing here in Seattle and throughout the United States and around the world. We have partnered with Seattle Sup Yoga. We have an instructor, Jill Jocks, who's been with us for 4 years, and she does classes 3 to 4 times a week during the spring and summer. Can host up to 10 people in her classes and goes over the basics of not only paddleboarding but yoga and kind of a fusion class.
So I'm trying to picture this in my mind. Draw me a picture in words.
So she'll go out actually, and whoever's in the class will tether themselves together, and they have small anchors, so they're not just randomly floating with the wind or the waves. So you are kind of stationary, but the idea is that being out in the water is going to be a little bit more relaxing, require a little bit more balance, and be much more challenging than your standard in a studio yoga class.
It sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
And how often does she hold her classes?
3 to 4 times a week, depending on demand.
And is it just during the week? Is it on weekends?
Well, weekdays and weekends, they're typically in the morning. We like to go out when the wind is calm on the lake, obviously, when it's not as choppy. And the classes start at 10 a.m. on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays.
Okay. So somebody could come out on the weekend.
Yes, absolutely.
So what other activities are going on?
Well, we got a couple events coming up here at the lake this weekend. There is on Sunday, the 20th, the Green Lake Gobble 5K and 10K and Mashed Potato Munch-Off. It's a race benefiting Seattle Union Gospel Mission, and they'll have at the end of the race, they have a mashed potato eating contest. So we're expecting a large influx of visitors on the lake this Sunday.
Like the hot dog eating.
Exactly, like the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, but with mashed potatoes.
Okay. I can't imagine. You know, I've seen pictures of the guy that won the hot dog contest, and I can't imagine doing the same with mashed potatoes, but...
Yeah, very Seattle.
Very Seattle.
Yeah, another event I wanted to mention coming up here on the December 10th is the Pathway of Lights. It's a Luminaries Holiday Paper Lantern Festival that happens from 4:30 to 7:30. It's a great holiday celebration, live music, bands, lots of free giveaways, fun for the whole family, lots of Christmas lights, lots of decorations. So I definitely recommend that to anyone who's never checked it out.
And that's open to anyone just to come out?
Free to the public, yes.
And it's a family event?
Correct, yeah. Great. Bring your dogs, family, kids, everyone is invited.
And what day? That's a
Saturday?
Saturday,
December 10th.
Sounds like a fascinating thing. They do this every year, right?
Yeah, it's an annual event. It's real popular. It's one of the most crowded times you'll ever see the lake, especially at night when it's dark out. You'll see the path lit up all the way around the 2.8-mile loop.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
So companies actually will do events at the boathouse as well, right?
Yeah. Our boat rentals is a great place to host your corporate event, team outing. We host clients anywhere from Amazon, Boeing, Tableau, Expedia, and smaller companies like to bring their people out for either team building events or just to get out in the water and relax.
I imagine it really is a team building thing when you get the staff out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Green Lake's a great place to do all this watercraft. There's no motorized boats on Green Lake, so it's always calm and not very choppy. And you have basically the whole lake to yourself, which is pretty nice.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to set up an event, how would they do that?
Yeah, you can get in touch with us either follow us on Twitter at Green Lake Boats or check us out online at greenlakeboats.com, and we can set up a reservation for your company or group for the spring or summer.
And if somebody just wanted to come out and rent a paddleboard or a kayak or a canoe, where would they find you on Green Lake?
We are located on the northeast side of the park and the lake. We're right across from the Evans Pool and Community Center.
So why don't you give us the contact information again?
Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at Green Lake Boats, and our website is greenlakeboats.com.
And a phone number?
206-527-0171.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's a great thing we have in Seattle, and it's almost one of those hidden things. Who would have guessed there's 2.2 million people that use Green Lake every year? And to have something like the Green Lake Boathouse, That's a real gem. An emerald gem. That sounds good, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, enough for that. I want to come back. I've been talking and started a series talking about the change of administration and what it means for the economy, what it means for industries, trying to get a handle around, and it's a very difficult thing because there's so little that you can really grab onto. A lot of things talked about, a lot of things discussed, but the specifics weren't there. Very often, when you have a career politician, they spell out their policies, you can follow them through, you can begin to see what the impact of those policies would have on the economy, on earners, on industries. In this case, it's more difficult. But there are some things which were promised which could be very, very positive going forward. Those two things which could stimulate the economy are a tax cut and a restructuring of the tax code. The tax code changes every single year. Clause after clause after clause continues to change. They're talking about really simplifying the tax code, and we'll see how that impact happens, and bringing along a stimulus bill by rebuilding the infrastructure of the U.S. That not only is pumping money into jobs, but infrastructure is really important for making us more competitive with the world. There's a forecast that by 2020, that's just 3 years away, by 2020, the U.S. will be one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive, manufacturing country in the world. We will be on our way to surpassing China as the top manufacturing company in the world. That's the forecast, and that's not very far away, but it depends upon rebuilding the infrastructure. And we're going to get to that after the break. We've got a lot to cover. We've got a lot of items to cover in the next few weeks as we talk about this. It's important to be prepared. It's important to be ahead of the curve instead of behind the curve. That's the focus of this program. It's been the focus of the program, is to put you ahead of the curve instead of behind the curve. And as we change administrations, I can't think of anything more important in terms of investments than being ahead of the curve and knowing where we're going. Don't go away. We've got more to discuss right after the break.
Stay tuned. About Money returns in a moment with Mike Adams here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
How do you picture retirement? House on the beach, small farm in the country, traveling the world with your spouse. The one thing you don't picture is running out of money. Retirement dreams are shattered all too often by poor investment choices, sending many retirees back to work. If you think the job market is tough now, try entering it after you've retired. Don't run out of money. Start planning now. Call Mike Adams of Adams Financial Concepts today at 206-903-1019 and learn more about how you can create wealth for retirement and probably, most importantly, protect yourself from running out of money. Adams Financial Concepts specializes in creating and maintaining wealth. Call today, 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
About Money continues. Remember the website adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here's Mike.
So, we're in a series talking about the change of administration, and I want to pick up on that as we finish this hour of the radio. Art Laffer was the chairman of the Economic Council of Advisors during the Reagan years, and when he was there, he sat down and on the back of an envelope or on a napkin, he explained the impact of taxes on federal revenues. It's an upside-down U. Imagine an upside-down U. And he explained it in this way, that if you have no taxes coming into the government. If you're on the left-hand side of that curve, where the bottom of the U hits the 0 point, if you have no revenues coming into the government, no taxes, no tax rate, you don't have any revenues. On the other hand, if you go up and down the other side of the U to where it comes down and hits 0 again, if you tax people 100% and they have no money for themselves, they're never going to work. They're not going to pay any taxes, and so once again, the government gets no revenues. So on that curve, that U, there's a relationship between the tax rates and the amount of money that comes into the government. Now, if you're on the upside of the U, if you think of cutting the U in half so that you have a peak that's a slope downward on one side and a peak and a slope downward on the left-hand side. So as rates increase on the left-hand side of the curve, you bring more and more money into the government. So a tax increase will actually increase tax revenues to the government. If you're on the right-hand side of that U, on the downslope of this side, tax increases will reduce the amount of money coming into the government. So if you're on the right side of that curve, by cutting taxes, you increase the amount of money coming to the government. If you're on the left side of the curve, if you cut taxes, you reduce the amount of money coming into the government. We saw how that works going back to Kennedy days when there was a tax cut. It was a tax cut of equivalent of about $100 per person, and it had a very stimulative effect on the economy. The economy went very, very well. We've had other times when we've had tax cuts that have really been stimulus to the economy. But if you go back to the early 2000s when George W. Bush cut taxes, it did not have a stimulating effect on the economy. It just amounted to really a reduction in the revenues that came into the U.S. government. The deficit grew during that time. So obviously he was on the left side of that curve where a tax cut actually reduced the amount of money coming into the government. And if you look at some of the economists at that time, there have been economists that predicted with the tax cut, it would significantly increase the revenues coming into the government. One of those, a well-known economist who's on CNBC, continued to predict for years that we would see a rise in revenues coming into the government. Obviously, he was wrong. He may end up in the Trump economic team. We'll see. He was wrong there. Will he be wrong again? On the other hand, changing the tax code is probably going to be a stimulus in the way they're doing it. The current tax rates are 10, 12, 15, 28, and 38.9%. They're talking about changing those rates to a 12, 15, and 25%. That's a significant decrease for the very top earners, the very rich of the richest. It's actually a slight increase for those who are now at 10%, would be at 12. Those at 15 would be the same. One of the big things that has been discussed recently in the last few days is doing away with the standard exemption. That is a big impact for those at the bottom of the income range. So the question is, are they going to put that into effect? Because that truly would be a negative. That's taking money out of people's pockets. And those are the very people who usually spend what they get in a tax break. That's a negative. So the tax code could be a very positive, could be a very negative sort of thing. We're going to have to see as the details come through and what's happened, whether we're going to have a positive, whether we're going to have a negative, whether it's going to add to the deficit, whether it's going to take away from the deficit. The forecast that was done during the campaign is that it would add significantly to the deficit. It would add trillions of dollars to the deficit. But that assumes that it doesn't have a stimulative effect. The idea of being on the upside of that Laffer curve, what's called the Laffer curve, that upside down U, if you're on the upside by reducing taxes, if you're on the upside, it increases the growth, and the growth makes up for the tax cut. That is the assumption that's being made now, that if we cut taxes, it will stimulate the economy, it will stimulate growth, and it will be positive for the economy. We'll see. Even once we know the details, it's difficult to know what the real impact will be. We probably won't know the real impact for a year after it's done. We'll have assumptions. We'll have people that'll say it's positive. We'll have people that'll say it's negative. We'll have to see. Simplifying it is, in my opinion, a positive just for having a simpler tax code. But that doesn't say anything about the economy and the impact of growth. Infrastructure, on the other hand, is something, if that's implemented, if Trump can pass a bill through the Congress, and he's got a Republican House and a Republican Senate, if he can pass that kind of bill, that could be very stimulative to the economy. It creates jobs because you're building roads, you're building bridges, you're building highways, you're building airports, you're building all those things. And those are areas in which, you drive on the roads, you know what the condition is. That's a negative in terms of work and negative in terms of business and efficiency. If we can do the infrastructure, that could be a very stimulative impact and push GDP up by a certain percentage, whether it's 1%, whether it's less than that, I don't know. But it could be a very stimulative effect. Of all the things that are mentioned, to me that seems like it's the most positive thing and would have the most positive impact of all the programs that Trump has proposed. But with that in mind, there's this whole idea that a 2% growth economy is not a very good growing economy. If you look back over the last 70 years of our history, our GDP has averaged about 2%. If you look at worldwide growth, it's averaged just above that. So 2% growth was what we experienced from 1982 until 2000, a little over 2%, 2.5%. It was a concern back in the 80s when we had that secular bull market that took us from 1,000 to 10,000. That's what we've experienced since 2009 to the current day, when we've gone from 6,600 to 18,000. It is a GDP that grows at 2%. It's not a negative. Anyway, we've got more to talk about. We'll be talking more about the Trump administration as we go forward and trying to see the impact of that on industries and the economy. So join me again next week. We've got a lot more to talk about, and have a very good weekend.
You've been listening to About Money with Mike Adams, a registered investment advisor. If you'd like more information about what you heard today, or about Mike's investment philosophy and strategy, or if you want Mike to evaluate your own portfolio, click on AdamsFinancialConcepts.com. That's AdamsFinancialConcepts.com. The information shared on the preceding program was for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. Join us again next Friday afternoon at 3 for more About Money with Mike Adams, here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL.
The preceding program was sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts. Creating and maintaining wealth has been the specialty of Adams Financial Concepts for over 20 years. Every portfolio managed by Adams Financial Concepts is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. The client's interest always comes first in portfolio decisions. Call Mike Adams today at 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com to check out their AFC performance. They welcome your review. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.